Well, hey, friends, we're here at episode 2
Yeah.
of the Buttercupp podcast. And in this episode, we're going to unpack this idea of how do you know when to actually buy a space, lease a space, go into maybe outside of your home, or move from where you are, all those things. It's very scary. It's always scary. I don't think it ever isn't.
No, it's always scary.
Yeah. So I know for us, when we started Buttercupp, I was always trying to think of how to keep my overhead costs as cheap as I possibly could.
Right.
So like when we first were setting up manufacturing in our basement, I bought pitchers from Dollar General.
Well, and there was a plastic shortage, so we had a really hard time
finding pitchers.
Yes.
We found pitchers
We were
on
our
the
way
to Makokata.
No,
wasn't it?
not Makokata. We were on our way
Macomb.
to a marching band competition, and
It's like the mother lode.
it was like in a cornfield, and we were so excited, and we told this lady why we were buying a million
I thought
pictures.
we were crazy.
She didn't care. She just
No.
looked at us like, that's fine, take your pictures
Buy
and
your
go.
pictures and get
And
out
we
of
were
here.
so
They
excited.
were $1 a piece. They were hardy,
Yeah.
very strong and sturdy. But so that point being is we were looking at how to keep our overhead costs down as much as we could because we didn't want to move. It wanted to be in our space as long as we could be. And that's when I can remember it was like 11:30 at night. We were pouring candles, and I walked out to our garage, and I just looked up. This isn't like in like the heavens open. That's not where I'm going with this. But I looked up and I realized that there was ductwork that ran on that vented into our bathroom and our bedroom. Then it ran through the garage,
Mm-hmm.
and it was covered in sheetrock. And I realized that this is like we talk about keeping things cheap. I thought, okay, I can not hire someone to come and put. Because our garage was not heated, didn't have air conditioning. We live in the Midwest. But I knew if I cut a hole in that side of that ductwork, all of a sudden I could heat and cool the garage door. And as long as we kept it shut, we could move manufacturing into the garage where we parked our cars. So now, boom, we lose our basement because we're manufacturing there, and then we lose our garage. But what we didn't lose is resources because
Right.
we kept our costs so entirely low. So I ran a calculation on the BTUs of our furnace, what it could actually output. So for everybody that's going to comment, so you can't do that. I made sure it could carry that load of that square footage, and that's exactly what I did. I cut a hole in it and put a vent cover over it, and to keep cost down, because when you're starting. So when we started Buttercupp, we started it, like we've talked about this, on a gift card. And then also, it's not like we had thousands of dollars to dump into a business. We kept it on the cheap, and a great product. We spent money where we needed to spend money, which is putting it into the product, but not making things fancy, not making things pretty, and just trying to make it to where we could put out a great product without spending a lot of money. So we finally got to this place where we were maxed out. We could not, my kids are older, but, I couldn't put them up for adoption. I could get rid of them. I'm kidding. But it's like you're like, hey, can I use your bedroom now? You just
Right.
can't like kick them out of their bedroom. I'm just joking, 100% by the way.
Thought about it.
Yeah, thought about it. But we just need to put one table into this bedroom, or inventory. Can we put inventory or packing peanuts in your bedroom? You'll be okay. Once it's like a beanbag chair, it's like, but so keeping those costs down. Finally, we came to this point where we're just like, we have to move. And so this was, it wasn't during COVID. We looked everywhere because we didn't want something that we were in a place at that point to where our choices were dictated by our budget.
Right. Well, and I was going to say too, one of the things that when you know is the tipping point is when your space is holding you back.
Yeah.
And so our space, we could only set out so much. And so then it was taking us too many days to pour. Like during market season, we were in our local farmer's market and
Tripping
then,
over everybody.
Yeah, everybody was tripping over each other. We couldn't get things cleaned up and put away fast enough. There was no room for finished inventory. So I think that, how do you know when it's time to go? It's when your space is causing you to not be efficient and you're losing money by staying there.
Yeah. And that goes even for, from a growth standpoint, there was a time at that time where you were working.
Right.
And finally, I remember Jennifer coming home from work. She's working part-time, and I was manufacturing, and you were coming home, and you jump in and help manufacturing and shipping and all this stuff. And finally, I was just like, you have to quit. This is detrimental to the expansion of our business. And then at that point, you quit, and then we were full-time.
The two of us.
Yeah, full-time, in air quotes, but
7 days a week.
Right, dumping all of our resources, had some cash we were living off of, but dumping our resources back into the business.
Right. And go back too, because this was COVID. And so literally, I don't know what day of the week it was that Illinois shut down, but by the end of that week, you had lost your job.
Yeah.
So you were laid off. So, again, we talk about being lucky during COVID. He was on unemployment for a little bit. And so we were able to kind of that weird COVID time where normally that wouldn't have worked, but because COVID kept giving the stimulus money and that kind of thing, like that was just such a weird time that normally if you lost your job,
the planets were just like aligned. It just aligned itself perfectly.
Right. Normally, if you lost your job, it would just be a horrible disaster.
Yeah.
And because of the stimulus money, we were able to not have to worry about you. And your plan was to get another job.
Yeah.
And my plan was to make candles, and that was going to be someday a way for me to not have to work this part-time job that I had found. So
yeah. So we were in this spot to where now, that was that little sacrifice of that season. But then finally we were just at this point where this is working, and we have to move and find a location. So we started to look, and some of the things that we bumped up against was the fact that we made something that smelled good, but we didn't want to be next to somebody that another like office building or something.
Well, or we looked at a place that they smoked meat. And so there's no way we could have that for a neighbor, and they wouldn't want us as a neighbor.
Right, exactly. It was like the clashing of the smells.
Right. Both smelled amazing, but not together.
Yeah. So, but when it comes to scaling, so just like we knew that we had to get to a certain place financially for Jennifer to be home. So that was a piece of scaling. So that was kind of like a growth spurt of really location. It's like, okay, her attention now needs to go to this location, which happens to be our home. And then we knew that we had to go to a spot where now we needed to physically move out of our house and find a different location. And when we get to this, when people get to that spot in business, a great way to know that you're there, and this is something that I just did with our budget, is we started setting aside projected rent of like, okay, if we took on this much of a lease, this is how much we need to stay in. We knew our first spot, we didn't want to go over $1,000 a month. And we knew that we would have utilities on top of that. We knew we'd have
even garbage,
internet, and trash can, and having a dumpster. And then at this time, we had already hired our first employee, which was Tristan. So we had payroll and workman's comp and insurance and all these pieces that were adding up. So we knew that we had to stay within that window. So then finding that space, it was tough.
Yeah, it was. It took us, I think, at least 6 months.
It was 6 months, yeah. 6 months to find that. But we knew that we got to this place that we knew it was detrimental to our growth if we didn't move to more space. And we knew that the ramp up of the volume of sales that were coming in that it was good. We tested the waters
We did.
over that 6 months.
But by also putting that rent aside, you have to go into it. At the time, we were still in COVID where everything was shut down. So we knew, even though we wanted to have a store, mostly what we needed was manufacturing space. And we didn't know how long it would be before we could open the storefront. So it's not like we could say, well, just by opening your doors into a retail space, you're going to have people walk in.
Yeah.
Perfect example in our Bettplex location, the week we moved in, they closed the road in front of us.
Yeah.
So we are not having the walk-in traffic that we will have or that we anticipated having. And so had we made the decision to come here just based on projected revenue, we would have, it would have been a very bad thing.
Don't make decisions based on projections.
Right.
Make it on current reality. Right. That was like, so us scaling, it was like, okay, we know that based on real-time analytics of resources coming in and sales being made, that we could afford this amount and this budget, and then also not having any debt. That was the other thing at that time, of just not carrying a debt load that would just hinder, because then you're if you start a business and take out this huge loan and then go into all this debt, then all of a sudden you instantly have to make X amount of resources just to get back to square one.
Right.
And that's what I was thinking when we were moving from the basement into the garage. I'm like, okay, if I move now and don't maximize where I'm at, I'm going to have to take on a certain amount of debt load that I didn't have before. So now I have to do that much in sales. Mind you, we have sales tax and taxes on top of that, and all those other pieces of the puzzle of just running a business just to get back to square one. And
well, and for us, one way that we've really managed our money is from day one, literally day one, we did profit first.
Yep. So it's a book. It's a fantastic book.
It's amazing, and it has really helped us. And that's one of those things that we wish that we could go back to when we've had other businesses. We didn't do that. And so one thing that I wanted to put into place, it's really hard as an entrepreneur. If you are a maker, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You hope you're going to go to a market and make $1,000, but then out of that $1,000, like, oh gosh, what do I keep? What do I buy supplies out of? Did I spend too much on supplies? And now I owe taxes and I didn't set enough aside. And so this was our first product-based business. And so it felt a little more fluid to me. And so I wanted to make sure from day one that we knew exactly what our paycheck was going to be. And we didn't take a paycheck for the first 6 months. And when I say our first paycheck, it doesn't mean it was a big paycheck. It just means that we were then paying
and even
ourselves.
till this day,
we do cap it.
Yeah, there's a certain percentage that we take each week, and we never go beyond that.
Even if the percentage, even if it was a larger amount, we cap what we take.
Yeah, so if it hits that percentage, and then if it's so we have a number that we don't go over.
And we do that.
Even if the percentage goes over that number, it doesn't go over that.
Right. And we do that because this is somewhat of a seasonal business. We get super busy in the summertime with markets, and then January hits and people forget about small businesses.
Yeah.
And that's kind of all makers experience that. All the markets are closed. People spend all their money at Christmas. And so winter's a little leaner. And so that's why we do that.
Yeah. So all of those pieces come into knowing when to scale. So you really need to know your numbers before you even enter into a location and moving out of a house or out of wherever, maybe you're using a buddy's garage or whatever it is that you're trying to scale, that really know your overhead costs, know that you know of what's going into your business. And that has to do with your cost of goods, of knowing, okay, I'm making whatever widget it is that you're making, that this is how much it costs to make this product, to ship this product, to pay taxes on this product when revenue comes in from it. If I'm doing wholesale, how all those pieces work, so that you know your real numbers of how much are you paying yourself, how much goes to taxes. So we have a good accountant. So, and that was out of the gate that we knew that was a good place to invest money because we were tiny.
Right.
So I knew that if we had a good accountant when we were tiny, that would help us have a good accountant as we grow and as we scale. And they've scaled with us, which has been fantastic. But with that, I'm not an accountant.
Right.
Most people are not. Most creatives and
don't ever want to think about
don't ever want to think about that. Now I do. I handle most of that, and that's most of my day is of sitting at my desk and ordering and processing, payroll and sending off tax bills, and it's the mundane of the business, but those are the numbers you have to know before you ever move into a physical location. And then if you have projected that out for a while, like we did for 6 months, we knew that we were ready to make that move. Mm-hmm. So then we moved into Moline, and that went great. And things opened back up, and things were moving forward. And then we knew, so how do you know when to scale? What's that point that you go, okay.
The tipping point.
Yeah, we need to open up another location. Now, I've always been the one that said, let's do another location.
I would still be back in Moline if it was up to me.
Yeah.
Like, we would just be in Moline.
Yeah. So I'm more of a idiot.
So
is that the word? I'm kidding. I'm joking. But just more.
He thinks a lot bigger than me, and it doesn't mean I don't think big. He just thinks big.
Yeah. So we got to this tipping point with Moline where now we had more team members working for us. We were at the farmers market. We were doing events around the region, and we had Moline. And Moline became the hub and that's still the hub today, where we do all of our shipping, receiving, inventory, manufacturing, everything's done. So we had this hub that was like this little beehive. It's this wonderful little beehive of our great team. And from that, I'm always looking, when it comes to scaling, are two things. Where can I go that meets a felt need? This is big. If you're listening to this is huge for your business. Where can I go that meets a need, and where can I go that already has attention? That's huge. Yeah. Because unlike Moline, because that's what we could find, and Moline is still a conversation we're having now of, talking with Moline of, hey, if we were to move somewhere else, what does that look like in Moline? Because we love the Illinois side, we love Moline. But Jennifer and I had been going to LeClaire on date nights for a super long time. We love LeClaire, and the attention is already there. It's already a destination, and people are going there to walk up and down the main road there, Cody Road, and shop.
And have an experience.
So that was the caveat for us that we really looked at and thought, this is a win, so to speak. But we still walk through that same process.
Right.
What's our budget? What do we want it to be? If this fails,
what does that look like?
What's the pivot look like? If this doesn't go like we think it's going to go, what's plan B? So with scaling, you want to have your overhead costs nailed down. You want to project out your budget before you ever spend a penny. You also want to have a plan B and a fail-safe that if this doesn't, it doesn't mean you don't have believe in your business. It just, I think that's wisdom.
I think so too. And I think it comes from having some failures under your belt, Exactly. I mean, but I think that's the interesting thing about you is that you are a big thinker, and yet at the same time, like like you'll work so hard to get me like on board with this idea, and then you'll be like, well, and if it fails, this is what we're gonna do, and I'm like, oh my gosh, do you think it's gonna fail? Why are we doing this? And he's like, no, I've got a backup plan, you know. And so I think that is a unique thing about you, that most people, they're just off for the dream, and they don't think about what if.
Jim Collins, who I love all of Jim Collins' books, Good to Great, Better by Choice, or something like that. But he makes this great point, and he calls it productive paranoia. You know, and I love that idea of productive paranoia that says, I'm going to be very productive, but I'm also going to be a little paranoid, you know, at all times, to where you just know, okay, I'm going to take this calculated risk. That risk doesn't mean this is going great, I'm going to jump into this and lock myself into this horribly long lease. And that was another thing for us, is we're like, okay, if we go into this space, which like Moline, that we don't want to do any more than a 2-year lease. We actually wanted a 1-year lease to test the waters.
Well, and we just didn't know what kind of growth that we were going to have.
We're in the middle of a pandemic. So it's
right. We had no idea and we could have exploded growth. And so we were a little bit afraid to, be stuck there. And the other thing too is, again, we talked about this last episode. This isn't our first rodeo. And with my photography studio, I was open for 13 years. How many times did we move? Do you remember? It was
5.
Oh, no. I think we counted one time, and it was at least 10 if you count. We started in our home.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we moved so many times. And so what we learned out of that was, you don't know until you get into a space what kind of things you're going to run into. And so like, for example, parking, you think you've got it figured out, and then you get there and you're like, one of my locations that I had, tour buses would come every afternoon. And I never knew there were tour buses. Like there was parking out there, but these tour buses would park and block the street forever, and then I had another location where the neighbor wouldn't share the garbage can with me. I mean, you just get in there and you just don't know these things, until you get there. And so as you go, you start learning, I need a shorter lease. What happens if the roof leaks? What happens if the roof leaks on my stuff?
What happened if you have pictures that you need to take and it's a go-kart race weekend and down in the district of Rock Island?
We had that too. It sounds like you're in the middle of a beehive. It is so loud. And
we love Rock
awful.
Island. We live in Rock Island. But that
there's
was
just
a funny one.
Yeah, and you just don't think about that stuff until you get in there. And so knowing that we've had these experiences where it's not that it was a bad location or a bad lease, it's just that there's stuff that you don't know until you live there. It's just like buying a house. You just don't know until you get there that neighbor's dog barks all the time, know? And so knowing that we want those shorter leases, we want to learn who our neighbors are, where's the parking, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, all those people. So do your homework. Really is what we're really talking about when it comes to location. And so LeClaire, when we were pursuing LeClaire, we knew we wanted to be there. We knew that we had an experience that we could offer through our candle making, and candles, that it would attract people. So the first location we moved into was just great. The conversation was wonderful. So this is another really huge piece of this puzzle, is you want to know who you're leasing from. Get to know their character. Get to know their integrity. Ask other people. And Rodney and Kim are amazing.
Right.
We love them. We love leasing from them when we were inside Grasshoppers, and we love leasing from them now, which is they bought a building in LeClaire right on Cody Road, which is where we wanted to get to.
We were technically on Cody Road, but now we're down. We were up on the hill, and so now we're down on the main sidewalk.
So when they purchased that, and this is about knowing when you can pivot, we were just waiting for something to open up. We knew we wanted to move. We only had a 1-year lease with Rodney and Kim, and he was just chatting with me. He's like, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting." I'm like, "You need to go for that. That's a wonderful spot." And so we moved, and that was a calculated risk that we knew would add a ton of value, and it's been wonderful.
It's been amazing, and I think too. asking yourself what's important in a location for you. You know, like when I had my photography studio, I was by appointment only. And so I could be what you call a destination business, meaning people only came there because I told them where it was and what time to show up. It didn't matter if I was on a busy street. And people always say, well, you know, I'm on a really busy street, so everybody sees us. Well, let me tell you, we are on Avenue of the Cities, and I cannot tell you how many people are like, oh, I thought it was a cupcake place. All the time.
Everyone. Yeah.
So yes, there's a ton of traffic that drives by. I don't think it's driving us business. I really don't.
No. And like with that location, we knew we were sacrificing parking.
Right.
Where we were in the middle of COVID. That's a struggle that we have even right now. But that was a budget decision in the midst of not knowing how long we were going to be in this, of not being able to have retail and have people come in. And
well, people ask us all the time, why'd you pick this building? Why'd you pick this location? Well, the most important thing was manufacturing, and it hit all the check marks on manufacturing.
Yeah, and so, if it just would have been that,
we could stay. Well, I don't know. We're growing out of it.
Yeah, but it would have been perfect, and it is, and it has been perfect.
Right.
And again, our landlord is fantastic.
Yeah.
Also, of just knowing the people. So that goes into, how do you go from Moline testing the waters, LeClaire testing the waters, to now the Betplex,
and technically the farmers market really was our first location. And so really to kind of,
you know what, that's so true. And that's been so beneficial for us.
Well, and so to back up, like, we knew that customers wanted to come and shop with us because we'd already been having that experience at the farmers market.
So that we were at the farmers market
first
when we were still manufacturing in our house.
Yes.
And that really, more than anything, was the big beta test of like,
people like us. They like our candles.
Yeah. They like us.
I know.
They love us. What's that? Like the SNL skit.
But they're going to come and shop with us.
Yeah.
But I do think that that's also a question that we get is, well, if you're at the farmer's market, why do you need to have a store? Or if you have a store, why do you need to stay at the farmer's market?
And here's why. I'm going to let Jennifer share why we love the farmer's market and don't ever want to go anywhere. Don't ever want to leave that. You can unpack that thought.
So to us, for one thing, so our farmers market, if you're not local, it's one of the top in the nation. So it is an incredible local farmers market. It's not like 6 little farmers setting up in a parking lot somewhere. Like, this is a really big farmers market. They have an indoor and an outdoor. And so for us to be there, you get your shoppers every week. It's so funny. Between 8 and 10, our sales are the regulars. They come down there, they buy their vegetables, they're there for their candle, they're there for whatever, like they come weekly, like it's their thing. And so those are our 8 to 10 sales. And then from 10 o'clock on, it's like the browsers, they love coming, they love buying local. And those customers don't necessarily come to our stores.
Right.
Certainly they'll make a visit because they really like us and our product. And so they're going to stop in and be like, oh my gosh, I remember when I found you at the farmer's market. But they don't switch from the farmer's market to our stores. And so really,
Moline,
yeah,
very rarely switches over to Iowa.
Right. Yes. That's the other thing. We're in a weird river community where people don't like to cross the bridge.
LeClaire is transient. It's people coming in from out of town to relax, and it's not a lot of people from the Quad Cities.
Right. Like, they'll go out there, but it's like a special day that they're going to go spend out there. And then same thing with Bettendorf. Those are families coming into the sports complex. And so they're spending the weekend here. They are looking for things to do while their kids have a tournament. They've got 3 hours to kill. What can they do? And they're just here at this hotel. There's nothing here.
Yeah. So again, it was about selecting this location in Bettendorf was about where can we meet a need and where is the attention already, where does it already exist? And it's this parking lots out here is packed Thursday through Sunday, week after week. And but back to the farmers market is, why don't you share a little bit about just customer feedback?
I was going to say, and I think that the farmers market is really like our core shoppers with us, really. locally. Because I feel like if they come to our other locations, if they come to Moline, they're like coming in to shop our clearance shelf, or they have like a really specific thing they're
And
stopping
we don't
in
do
for.
our candle making or lotion making at
we
the farmer's
don't.
market.
Right. So if
they
they
would
want
come
to
in
make
for
some,
that. Yeah.
and they will come in for that. But those are like those shoppers there, they want to connect with the makers. They want to buy things that are locally made, and they appreciate high quality. And so I think that is an amazing way for you to have instant feedback on your product. So if you're a maker, you're thinking about going into a farmer's market, absolutely 100% we would tell you, yes, do it. You are able to immediately watch their reaction with their product, watch them interact with it. And it gives you just like a lot of condensed time. Like if you think about like a training that you're taking or something, if you can go take a class 8 hours in one weekend versus 8 hours spread out over 8 weeks.
Yeah, because like your family might say
Yeah.
that your food truck is, or your food that you make
Right.
for all of them, whatever it is, you know, your baklava. Okay,
Right.
so you make this amazing baklava, and you're thinking, I need to open up a store
Right.
and sell baklava, you know. So then what you do instead, the more calculated risk is, I'm going to do an occasional vendor
Yep.
at a farmer's market, or I'm going to enter into Good Makers Market that happens in Tipton, and I'm going to sell this outside of my group. And you're going to do research, and so that market research, that's just a fancy word for it. You're going to see what people say. You're going to see how they interact with your product, and if it's the law of supply and demand.
Right.
If people are demanding your product, you're supplying that product.
Right.
And then, so the market, like Jennifer said, the farmer's market is a great testing ground. Little events is a great testing ground before you take that big jump into like putting really like a rock around your neck sometimes.
Well, and it's just an amazing incubator. So like for me, when I'm at the farmer's market, like those are my people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they think the way that I think, and it's really, really fun to cheer on like new businesses and new business ideas. And it's just like the coolest place to be, to see all these people that are passionate about doing things just like you are. And so just the atmosphere it's
so great.
It's awesome. And you'll make so many new friends, and you're going to meet so many customers because it's a ton of people in a really short amount of time. And so you're able to really get out there and see exactly how people think about you.
Yeah. So like to kind of sum this whole talk up, this podcast up, is know your numbers, you know, make sure that you know your overhead costs. If you're going to go into a lease, set that money aside and see how you can make it with your business without it. Do your research with who your landlord's going to be, how parking is, how long of a lease it is, and first and foremost, beta test your market to see if you're ready to go into a location. If you follow those steps, you inadvertently put fail safes in place that help you to scale. So
exactly.
There we go.
That's it.
So, hey, thanks for listening to this podcast. We would love to hear from you. What questions do you have? We're not saying that we know everything there is to know about business. We're just sharing our hearts and sharing our wisdom of what we've learned. If you have some questions for us, we're going to be talking more in depth about our business. We'd love to hear from you. And also make sure you follow us and like and share and comment and all those wonderful things.
Thanks for joining us. See you next time.
Bye-bye.